riding in stop-start traffic for quite some time now. Not a problem at all. So the engine heat has been managed rather well. It's not a buttery smooth motorcycle. You'd require it to be about 2700 RPM for it to be completely smooth and knock-free. Now the weight has also been reduced by 11 kgs. It seems like a reasonably comfortable motorcycle. The suspension setup is quite comfortable. It's a very enjoyable motorcycle on the road. It's definitely sharper, it's more engaging. And listen to the sound of the engine and exhaust.
Hey guys, welcome to Motoroids. My name is Amit and this of course is the new Guerrilla 450, the motorcycle that shares most of its platform with the much loved Himalayan 450. And while a lot of you think that this is an offshoot of the Himalayan, such is not the case. Both the motorcycles started their life at the same point in time, and of course the launches had to be staggered because Royal Enfield had to keep the excitement going. So while the development happened concurrently, the launches happened differently. And there are differences between the two platforms. The two bikes obviously are different. By the looks of it, I understand that you would think that this is a scrambler, but it's not. Royal Enfield is projecting it as a roadster, which is more accessible, meant essentially for the road. And don't get fooled by those block pattern tires. They're wide, they're chunky, they look like they can do a bit of soft roading, but they're essentially meant to be on the road. Now let me start by telling you all the differences between this motorcycle and the Himalayan, because I'm pretty sure that a lot of you want to know all about that. So to start off, as you would see, the front suspension doesn't have as much travel as the Royal Enfield Himalayan, and while that one has 200, this one has only 140. At the rear you have 150 as compared to 200. So that's one of the differences, because this is road bias. The seat height has gone down significantly as compared to the 800 plus seat height of the Royal Enfield. This one is 780 mm only, and as a result of that, the handlebar height has also gone down. But additionally, 7 mm lower is the handlebar height when you sit on the rider's seat. Now, in terms of the engine, this is the same unit that you are familiar with. 40 HP of power, 40 Newton meters of torque. Very torquey, beautiful engine. The ground clearance here is
169 mm.
The weight is down by 11 kgs, and while the essential chassis is the same, this part is the same, this part is the same, the subframe here is a little bit different, essentially to make this motorcycle look smaller. It's not as long, so some modifications have been made at the rear. The head here also has been modified, and the rake angle is sharper, of course, because this is more road biased. The tank here, obviously this is not an ADV, so the tank size has gone down. This is 11 liters, and as you can see, the pillion seat also is not as spacious as you would want to have on probably an ADV. This is a roadster, so the seat length is a little bit smaller. The end can here is the same as the Himalayan. The front wheel, of course, is smaller. It's wider. It's a 120 section tire. At the rear, you have 160 section. An unusual choice, but I'll talk to you all about how this motorcycle feels on the road through POV. But those tires really work. They're very good on the road. The grip is fantastic. And the front 120 also has its advantage, because the throttle response on this motorcycle is much crisper. It's not as progressive, as soft as the Himalayan. In terms of the instrument console, this has been lifted from the Himalayan, and it's a very usable unit. We've seen how beautifully the navigation has been integrated in this instrument console, and nothing has changed there. The headlight is the same. Over the tank, the fuel lid is skewed towards one side, it's skewed towards the right. So is the instrument console as well. The key is a familiar unit. It's not very different from what we've seen on the Himalayan. Now, the suspension here is the same layout. The mount points are the same. However, the damping ratings have been changed. and to compensate for the lack of travel that it has, it is slightly firmer. So whenever there is a force on the suspension, it damps it in a bit more firm manner. So overall, as you sit on the motorcycle, you'll realize that it doesn't sag down as much as the Himalayan, of course, for obvious reasons. And the suspension also feels slightly on the firmer side as well. Now, the rider triangle here is one of the bigger differences. And for those of you who think that the Himalayan is very intimidating, it's not something which is very accessible, this is the motorcycle to go for, because me being 5 feet 10, I can very easily dig my heels into the ground. And for the shorter ones amongst you, especially the ones who don't want an ADV or a really big motorcycle, this makes itself a lot more accessible. It's a fantastic city motorcycle. And as you can see, the foot peg position also is slightly rear set. It's almost underneath my behind, and it's not a foot forward kind of a position. It's right underneath my butt. So it's got a reasonable amount of sportiness, but it's never too committed. As you can see, it's quite comfortable. So you can take it for long rides as well. A fantastic machine visually for city rides. Seems like it can do long distances as well. And as I sit on the motorcycle and go out riding it, I'll let you know all about the performance as well. Here you have this USB socket, the ignition switch, modes, hazard switch, turn indicators, and the pass switch along with the horn is exactly the same as the Himalayan. I probably could have done with wider mirrors, but I'm not complaining because it's more stylistic than functional. The turn indicators have also obviously been lifted from the Himalayan, and the grab rails here are very, very practical. There's a ton of accessories also available, and the full list of all of those accessories will be shown on the screen right now. Now, if you want all the differences over the Himalayan in a snapshot, you can see all of those changes on the screen right now. So in a nutshell, it's a more road-biased machine, wider tires, more road-biased tires, less ground clearance, less seat height, less weight, less intimidating, more rider-friendly on the road, and for the shorter riders also, this is more inviting. Time now to get onto the bike and let you know about how it feels from the saddle. But before I do that, let me just fire up the engine as well to let you know what the exhaust sounds like. And in my books, this is pretty similar to what you saw and heard on the Himalayan. Do let us know your thoughts about the exhaust in the comment section. And now, let's take it out for a spin.
Alright guys, so we are out of the city now and onto some emptier streets, and after having ridden the motorcycle through the city, I have some observations that I'm going to share with you. And the first one of those is that it's very easily manageable, very easy to hop onto. And here, as you can see, the seat tapers narrowly up front, so even if you're not very tall, for the shorter ones amongst you also, it's very easy to put your feet down, very easy to manage, very easy to get onto, to paddle. And if the Himalayan was a little too intimidating for you, this one will come across as very friendly, very accessible motorcycle. So that's one. Then you sit on the motorcycle, not in the motorcycle, and the instrument console as well as the tank are skewed towards the right, so it gives it a very quirky kind of a look. About the engine, it's not a particularly cool day here in Barcelona, but I cannot feel any heat emanating from the engine onto my shins or the calves. So engine heat does not seem to be a problem at all, and we have been riding in stop-start traffic for quite some time now. Not a problem at all. So the engine heat has been managed rather well. Now, as you can see, the RPM is at sub 3000 revs, and if you want to ride this motorcycle completely knock free, if it has to be very smooth, it requires you to be above 2600 2700 rpm. Even smoother if you're going to be about 3000 rpm. So I'm talking about the city right now. I have not ridden it hard on the highways, but if you are, for example, right now we are going down a slope, so this is not its natural behavior. If you're going to be on a plain straight, you'd require it to be about 2700 rpm for it to be completely smooth and knock free, and about 3000 rpm is where it really smoothens out. More to come, stay tuned. The sculpture and the tradition and the culture in this part of the world is absolutely beautiful. It's amazing, and wherever you go you see these beautiful historical buildings. The roads are immaculate. There's cleanliness everywhere. People are very civilized, and this country has a liking for sports and fitness. So you'll see people jogging, cycling, doing all sorts of outdoor activities. Very different vibe to the city. Very young, very effervescent, very outdoorsy. Alright, so let's also talk about the ergonomics a little bit. And as I mentioned, the seat height here is significantly lower than the Royal Enfield Himalayan, and the handlebar itself has been brought down by about 7 mm. But if you consider the reduction in the seat height, overall the handlebar height of this motorcycle is lower by 30 mm as compared to the Himalayan. Your foot pegs are almost directly under your butt, just very slightly forward, so the foot peg position is quite rear set. Not sporty, but it's not feet forward as well. And as you can see, the instrument console is a familiar unit. It's been taken from the Himalayan. The fuel tank capacity here is also lesser at 11 liters. Now the weight has also been reduced by 11 kgs, but a big part of that is also the reduction in the fuel capacity. So if you cut that out, if you talk only about the metal and other components, the weight has reduced by around 6 kgs, but in all it's 11 kgs if you consider the fuel as well. So about the ergonomics, the seating position here, as I mentioned, is such that the handlebar is slightly lower than the Himalayan. It's very mildly sporty, but it's not uncomfortable, overly competent at all, and it feels more sporty than say the Hunter or even the classic 350. So the foot pegs are slightly rear set, and you seem to be in a position where your knees are reasonably bent, and if you're going to be riding around twisties, it offers you a setup which lends itself well for sporty riding, but it's never uncomfortable or overcommitted. So for riders of variety of heights, this motorcycle should present itself as very accessible. Probably for the giants amongst you, if you are say 6'3" or 6'4", it might feel a little too cramped, but for the most part, for a wide range of riders, there shouldn't be any problem. The switchgear is easily accessible. As I see, it's all very familiar. Although the mirrors lean a little bit more towards styling than functionality, I think they could have been wider and could have provided a better view of what's coming from behind. But all in all, it seems like a reasonably comfortable motorcycle. The suspension setup is quite comfortable, and we've been riding for some time now, and I don't feel any fatigue whatsoever. So you should be able to ride this motorcycle for longer distances as well. It's often a matter of getting used to, and while this motorcycle is not uncomfortable right off the bat, it's not also a very relaxed, feet forward, sit straight kind of a seating position as well. But going by what I have experienced until now, you can ride this motorcycle for longer distances as well. Comes with a slipper and assist clutch, and the clutch action is reasonably light. We have been riding through the city. There have been scores of these traffic lights all across, and I don't feel any inconvenience on my fingers. It's reasonably light, very usable, so even in stop-start traffic should not be a problem at all. The good thing is there's no heat, as I mentioned before, and even in hot conditions you should not have any problem. Alright, so we are on the highway after traveling through the city for about half an hour, and as you can see, the motorcycle comes into its own as it crosses 4000 rpm. There's a very nice growl to it. The end can is the same as the Himalayan. Over the Himalayan, you'd be interested in knowing a few things, and I thought I'll let you know. So since this is not an off-roader, the suspension travel has gone down from 200 mm on the Himalayan up front to 140 up front here, and at the rear the suspension travel is 150 mm. The Himalayan had 200 there as well. The wheelbase has been shortened primarily because the swing arm is now shorter. Also, while the chassis components are similar, they are shared to a large extent. Some parts, essentially to reduce the length of the motorcycle, the chassis has been shortened just a little bit. The area around the head has been tweaked to suit the more sporty character of this motorcycle. The rake angle here is sharper, of course, because this is essentially a road machine. A lot of people think that the Guerrilla is a scrambler. Royal Enfield is not projecting it as a scrambler. They are calling it a new retro roadster, and it's meant essentially for the road. And while it can do a little bit of soft roading, the ground clearance is
169 mm.
but it's not meant to go off the road by design. And while those tires, 120 section up front and 160 section at the rear, both look very chunky, give this motorcycle a lot of presence, but they're not meant for off-road use. They're meant for on-road. They're block pattern, but mind you, they're designed with on-road performance in mind. So these are some things that you need to know. The engine is exactly the same as the Himalayan. Of course, when the motorcycle was launched over the past few months, there have been learnings, and Royal Enfield have incorporated whatever changes they deemed necessary in terms of the smoothness, the reduction in noise. And I'll give you my conclusive thoughts on that topic once I've ridden this motorcycle enough. But we have been told that that has been one of the improvements. Another big change in terms of the gearing is that since the tire at the rear is smaller, it runs longer gearing. What that means is that as opposed to the 47 teeth on the Himalayan at the rear sprocket, this one has 45 teeth, which in effect would mean better acceleration if the wheel size is the same. But since the wheel size is now shorter, according to Royal Enfield, the acceleration is pretty much the same. And while they're similar, this one should be slightly more sprightly if you compare the two back to back. The footprint of this one is wider, of course, because the tires are wider. And now we'll be heading into the hills that you see there, and that's exactly where I'll be able to let you know the differences in the handling between the Himalayan and the Guerrilla. The Himalayan by itself was fantastic in terms of handling. You couldn't fault it. It was supposed to be an off-roader with a big front wheel, a smaller rear, big travel, but yet it handled like an ADV has no business handling. So I'm very excited to see how this one handles. Let's have a look at the suspension setup also. And as you can see, this is a 43 dia regulation setup, and you have gaiters here. One more important thing that you would want to know is that the disc size here is smaller as opposed to the 320 mm on the Himalayan. This one is 310 mm, and at the back the disc setup is the same. It gets sintered brakes, so the braking is supposed to be sharp. It feels pretty confidence inspiring to me as of now. I need to be riding it faster to give you a conclusive opinion. Let's have a look at a few things on the instrument console and switchgear while we are waiting here. So you have this USB-C socket right here, and the instrument console has this tacho. You have a speedo, the clock, the gear indicator, the fuel, and you have the odo here. High beam, low beam, turn indicators, horn, ignition, and the M button here with the hazard switch right here. I feel comfortable until now. There is no problem whatsoever, no stress, no strain, no fatigue, and off we go for the faster section of the ride, so stay tuned. Alright, we are on a proper motorway now with a speed limit of 120 kilometers per hour. We are doing about 100 right now. And listen to the sound of the engine and exhaust. As you can see, the tail lamp and the blinker are integrated. You can see it on the motorcycle right in front of me. So it's similar to what we had in the Himalayan. The exhaust end can is exactly the same and the sound is pretty much the same. I'm going up a couple of gears. 6th gear. Motorcycle for a reasonable amount of time now, I think over 100 kilometers, and there are some observations that I wanted to share with you after all this time. And while we were told that the noise and the vibrations that were there in the Himalayan have been largely sorted, and it might be mildly less also, I'm not disagreeing with what Royal Enfield has claimed, but there still is some vibration to be experienced in the motorcycle across the rev range. It's not a buttery smooth motorcycle. Like, you cannot compare it with a sorted Honda or any other Japanese motorcycle. It's not annoying, but there are some vibrations to be felt. And as I mentioned, below 3000 rpm there is that judder, and it smoothens out after 3000 rpm. As you can see right now, there is a bit of a judder, and it smoothens out as you pick up pace. But as you take the motorcycle above 6000 rpm, there are some vibrations, and very perceptible ones, to be experienced on the handlebar, tank, foot pegs, and it's commensurate with what we felt on the Himalayan as well. So it's nothing that's going to put you off. It's not a deal breaker, but there are vibrations and you need to be aware of that. Also, the other big difference that we can see as compared to the Royal Enfield is the throttle response. And the throttle response on the Himalayan, since it's an off-roader, was more progressive, it was softer. This motorcycle, on the other hand, when you put it in the performance mode, the throttle response is rather sharp, and it can also be a little bit abrupt sometimes, which obviously adds to the character of the motorcycle. It feels more intent to go, it feels like it's sharper, it feels like it's more fierce, and on the road it makes you feel more engaged. However, it's not the most progressive of the throttle responses that we have seen, and compared to the Royal Enfield, there is a marked difference. I quite like it, but you can clearly see a difference in terms of the way this motorcycle handles, and the fat rear rubber and the fat front rubber really helps, especially with that sharp throttle input, so that whenever there is a wheel spin, as you crack open the throttle and there's wheel spin, you can actually rely on the grip of the rear tire, that is not going to wash out, it's not going to slide away. And the fat 160 rubber at the rear really helps. Even the front really helps, because as you crack open the throttle, since the throttle response is very sharp, the suspension has a tendency, as you accelerate, to come up, and as you roll off, it has the tendency to go down. So the front tire also helps the stability of the motorcycle. And around a set of bends, as we traverse through some really inviting bends in Spain today, this motorcycle can be a lot of fun. You just have to practice a little bit of caution, as I mentioned, because of the sharper throttle response. Now, if you don't want the throttle response to be that sharp, you also have the option of choosing between performance and eco modes. And the eco mode, what it essentially does is that for any given amount of throttle opening, the power and torque output is not as much as the performance mode, so you'll have to crack it open more to get there. So the throttle response is not as sharp, and Royal Enfield have remedied what probably could have been a problem for some of you. So if you want the motorcycle to move in a more docile manner, you can choose the eco mode, and it works perfectly, and it also saves fuel efficiency. In terms of fuel efficiency, you'll get about 28 to 30 kmpl on this motorcycle if you're not riding in stop-start traffic, which is pretty good. And it's been some time since I've been riding. The ride is slightly on the firmer side, but never uncomfortable. Boosts confidence, inspires confidence. Around bends, it feels like it really has a lot of intent to lean down. It doesn't disappoint you, it doesn't feel wallowy. And around canyons, it can be a lot of fun. On the highway also, if you're doing triple-digit speeds, 120 or more, it feels very planted, very solid. And again, the fat rubber really helps. All in all, it's a very enjoyable motorcycle on the road. It's definitely sharper, it's more engaging, and it wants you to ride it hard. And as I mentioned, it's not entirely buttery smooth, undramatic, so it has its own character. And those of you who like your bikes that way are definitely going to love it. Because of the sharper rake angle and the shorter wheelbase, it feels more agile as well. And around tighter bends, even on long sweeping corners like this one, this feels a lot of fun. I quite like this motorcycle. If you're in the market for something which is not overly powerful, something which is usable across a broad variety of applications within the city, on the highway, around canyons, this motorcycle really fills in all of those spaces rather well. It's not a long distance tourer, but with my experience on the motorcycle for whatever time I spent on this, it's not uncomfortable. And if you really want to be taking it over a long distance, it doesn't resist that. It doesn't have a big fuel tank, so that's a bit of a problem. But with its fuel efficiency, it has a range of about 300 kilometers or thereabouts, which is decent enough, I think. Pillion seat could have been a little bit more spacious, so if you're going to be riding with a Pillion, maybe you'll probably have to change the seat. There are a lot of accessories which are available. In fact, there is an accessory which increases the seat height by over 23 mm, and you can choose that seat for better cushioning. If you're taller, you can use that seat. If you're going to be riding with a Pillion, you can use that seat. Then you have a small screen, which is essentially for aesthetics. There is a bigger screen which is meant for some wind resistance. You have crash guards, and you also have stays for panniers, and you also have a new set of panniers introduced by Royal Enfield. So a lot of accessories, new accessories have come in for this motorcycle, so you can choose from among all of them. So far, I think my only gripe with the motorcycle would be more than expected vibrations. I would have wanted it to improve over the Himalayan, and then I would have also wanted it to have a slightly more progressive throttle response, but I think it's by design, it's not by accident, and for those who like it that way are definitely going to love it.
Now, what's missing in this motorcycle is that it does not come with a lot of adjustability in terms of suspension. So a lot of other motorcycles are coming with adjustable front as well as rear suspension in terms of the damping and rebound. I'm not saying that it's absolutely necessary, but had that been featured there, it would really have been fantastic. It also does not get traction control or cornering traction control or cornering ABS that a lot of other motorcycles are getting. Also, it does not come with a quick shifter. Now, if I had to sum up as to who this motorcycle is for, and if I had to tell you as to whether you should go for the Himalayan or this, the answer is simple. If you're looking for a motorcycle that can do everything, including off-roading, long distance touring, and you're not afraid of a motorcycle which is heavier, which is taller, then I would say that the Himalayan is a more versatile motorcycle for me. But that is not the requirement for a lot of other people. And for those who want a motorcycle primarily for road use and something which is more accessible, something which I'm assuming is even less costlier, and something which can be used for a weekend run as well as for the occasional long ride as well, then the Guerrilla 450 is for you. Otherwise, as a more wholesome motorcycle, something that can do a lot more, the Himalayan is the way forward. The key specs of the Guerrilla 450 can be seen on the screen right now, and it'll let you know all the basic specs that you need to know about the motorcycle. Finally, coming to the pricing will be there in the description anyway, but I am recording this audio before the pricing was announced. My assumption is that this motorcycle will compete with the Speed 400, which is priced at about 2.25 lakh rupees, but probably Royal Enfield will not go down that low in terms of pricing, and between the two variants, the motorcycle I think will be priced between 2.3 and 2.5 lakh rupees. For exact pricing, you can check the description. The two primary competitors of this motorcycle are the Speed 400, that's a Triumph, and the KTM 390 Duke. Both the motorcycles are also very capable. The KTM has more power but slightly less torque, while the Triumph has less power and torque. It's a very capable motorcycle, the Guerrilla 450, and at a good price, I really think that it'll have a lot of takers. Now, in terms of colors and variants, there are 5 color options in all, but it's not as simple, so listen carefully. So the color options include smoky silver,
Playa Black, which are the base variants. Then you have the Gold Dip, Yellow Ribbon, and Brava Blue. Now, what you have to understand here is that the base variants and the top variants are functionally the same. The only difference is that the base variants will get basic instrument console with the tripper as an optional accessory, while the higher variants will get the digital instrument console with integrated Google navigation. So the Smoky Silver and Playa Black are the base variants, but the Playa Black is also available with the TFT digital display. And then you have the Gold Dip, Yellow Ribbon, and Brava Blue, which are available exclusively with the TFT display and Google navigation. So those are the variants, and the prices will be provided in the description.
Now, while this video was shot, the smoke variant was not introduced, but it was when the launch happened. And on your screen, you can see some images of the smoke variant as well. As I mentioned before, the smoke variant is the base variant. So that was that, guys. Our first ride review of the fantastic new Guerrilla 450. Do let us know what you thought of this video. If you liked it, give us a like, share, subscribe to Motoroids. And until next time, this is your friend Amit Changani signing off. Rev hard, rev free, and ride safe.